When we think about India's fight for independence, we often think of these huge, sweeping stories. But sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones you don't hear as often. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, the story of Assam. This is a fight that didn't start with a call for a new nation, but with something much more personal, a battle to save a language.
So how does that even happen? How does a fight over a language spark a full-blown revolution? Well, it's a really fascinating story because Assam's journey to independence, it didn't begin on a battlefield or in a political chamber. Nope. It started in libraries and with journals, led by poets and scholars. It all came down to a battle for words.
Okay, so to really get this, you have to look at these three key moments. They basically set the stage for everything. First, 1826, the British East India Company shows up and takes control. Then just a decade later, in 1836, bam! They replace Assamese with Bengali as the official language. I mean, that's a direct hit to the heart of their culture. And then, way later, in 1885, you see the beginnings of a nationwide movement for independence. You can just feel the tension building, right? This clash between a unique regional identity and this bigger, all-India struggle.
Right. So this is the key. The first spark wasn't really political. It was deeply personal. I mean, think about it. When the British came in and basically banned the Assamese language from schools and courts, that wasn't just some boring administrative change. For the people living there, it felt like a direct attack on who they were. It was like someone was trying to erase their entire identity.
And you've got to remember who was actually in charge at this point. It wasn't the British Crown, not yet. For more than 30 years, Assam was run by a corporation, the British East India Company. This period was called the Company Raj. And for a company, what's the bottom line? Profit and efficiency. So their decision to swap Assamese for Bengali was probably just seen as a practical move. But man, did it lay the groundwork for a massive cultural conflict.
Okay, but then we get to 1873. And this was a huge turning point. After decades of protests and petitions, they did it. They got their language back in schools and offices. And you have to understand, this wasn't just a policy victory. This was everything. It was a massive win that transformed the Assamese language from just, a way to talk into this powerful, potent symbol of their identity and their growing sense of nationalism.
So, with their language back, what's the next move? You might think it would be straight into politics, but not quite. The first response was actually literary. It was brilliant, really. A new generation of educated Assamese realized that to truly protect their identity, they couldn't just have it on paper. They had to actively rebuild it, celebrate it, and define it, using their own words and their own stories. And that literary energy needed a home, right? A place to organize. Well, that happened in 1888. A bunch of Assamese students living right in Calcutta, the heart of British India, got together and formed the Assamia Bhasha Unnati Sadhani Sabha. Now, I know the name Assami Language Improvement Society sounds a little dry, maybe, but don't let that fool you. This group became the absolute engine of a cultural renaissance. And this wasn't some faceless movement. It was driven by real, passionate people. At the very center of it all were these three literary giants. We're talking about Lakshminath Bisbarua, Chandrakumar Agawala, and Hemachandra Goswami. They were so influential that people started calling them the Trimurti, basically the trinity of this new, exciting literary age.
And what they accomplished was just incredible. They weren't just writing poems. They launched a super influential journal called Jonaki that became a platform for all these new writers. They worked on standardizing Assamese grammar. They even helped publish the Hemkosh, the very first etymological dictionary of the language. On top of all that, they started writing about the region's economic problems, talking about self-reliance. They were literally building the foundation, the entire intellectual and cultural infrastructure for a modern Assamese identity.
So, with all this incredible energy around culture and identity, it was only a matter of time, right? This explosion of pride couldn't stay just in books and journals. It was bound to spill over into the political world. That initial fight for language had laid the perfect groundwork for much bigger, bolder demands.
And you can see this evolution happening so clearly when you look at these two organizations. First, you had the Jorhat Sarbajanik Sabha from 1884. It was an important first step for sure. They were raising their voices about things like unfair taxes and opium cultivation, but they were kind of careful not to push the government too hard. But then came the Assam Association in 1903. This was a whole different ballgame. It was broader, more influential, and it became the main political voice for Assam, demanding things like more local democracy. And this was all happening before the Indian National Congress really had a presence there.
So this brings us to a really crucial moment. The leaders in Assam had a massive choice to make.
Do they keep their focus local, fighting for Assamese issues as a regional movement? Or do they take their fight to the national stage and join the huge, growing struggle for all of India's freedom? And this wasn't a snap decision, not at all. It was a really careful, strategic process. It started small. In 1916, the Assam Association began sending people to the Indian National Congress meetings, just to see what was up. But then, after a lot of intense debate, in 1921 they made the big call. They voted to merge with the national movement. And just like that, the Assam Provincial Congress Committee was formed, officially tying Assam's destiny to India.
And a lot of this was thanks to visionary leaders like Nabin Chandra Bordoloi. He had this brilliant insight. He saw that the fight for Assamese identity and the fight for Indian independence didn't have to be two separate things. He realized they weren't competing goals. In fact, he argued you could weave them together into one single, much more powerful struggle.
And wow, did that merger change things. It just unleashed this powerful new wave of activism all across Assam. The region was now all in. They were fully committed to the final, most intense phases of the freedom struggle. And the people, they were ready to make some truly incredible sacrifices. And you could feel the power of this new, unified movement almost immediately. Take the non-cooperation movement. You had even the most exploited, most isolated workers, the laborers in the tea gardens, rising up. We're talking about 8,000 of them going on strike. And what were they chanting? Gandhi Maharaj Ki Jai. Glory to Gandhi the King. It just goes to show you how deep the national message had reached into every single corner of society. Then came 1942. This was it. The final all-out push for freedom. Mahatma Gandhi issues the call for the Quit India movement, and he gives it this powerful, electrifying slogan, "Do or die." It was a call to action that echoed across the entire country, and the people of Assam, they answered it with just immense courage. And if you want to understand the level of sacrifice in Assam during this final push, you just have to look at the story of one man, Kushal Konwar. He was arrested for being connected to a train derailment, and the British hanged him. Now get this, his fate was totally unique. He was the only martyr in all of India to be hanged during the 1942 Quit India movement.
But the sacrifice, it wasn't just the leaders. This spirit of do or die reached everyone. I mean, even kids. And that brings us to the story of a young girl from a town called Gompur. She was just 14 years old.
Her name was Kanakalada Barua. Can you imagine? At just 14, she was at the front of a procession, trying to hoist the national flag on a police station. And for that, she was shot and killed by the police. Her story, it became this heartbreaking, powerful symbol of the profound sacrifice made by ordinary people, even children, in Assam's fight for freedom. So where does that leave us? What do we take away from a story like Assam's? Well, it really changes how you look at a nation's history, doesn't it? It shows us that a huge freedom movement is never just one single story. It's more like a complex mosaic, built from hundreds of smaller, passionate, local struggles. Struggles for language, for culture, for identity. It's a really powerful reminder that if you want to truly understand the history of a nation, you absolutely have to listen to all of its voices.